So welcome to panel 2, Women in Technology. Today we will be discussing how women are leading businesses in the MENA region. So the statistics show that in the UAE, 70% of university students are female. However, only 25% of those graduates ever enter into the workforce. And this number drops drastically and even further as we reach C-suite positions. So today we're going to hear from women that are leading the charge. These women are entrepreneurs, leaders, and enablers that have really been active and successful in terms of creating an impact in the business and startup ecosystem of the Middle East and North Africa regions. So today we have with us leading the panel discussion, Dr. Tarifa Al-Zabi, Acting Director General at the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture. We have with us Rola Abu Mane, the Chief Executive Officer at Standard Chartered Bank UAE. Ms. Anwar Al-Shimari, Chief Innovation Officer at Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, and Claudia Vergero-Massey, CEO at Siemens Oman. So these women are all taking charge and leading the way in their respective positions at their various organizations. And today we will hear from them about their challenges, as well as what strategies they've implemented for promoting women enterprise development and driving the growth and economic development of their respective organizations. So today what I'd like to do is just begin with the conversation and asking these ladies to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit more about their backgrounds, and then go into the questions that give us more insight into how they came this far, how they've been, what contributed to their success, and what are their current positions in their current organizations and how they're really leading that charge. So what I'd like to do is maybe start with Ms. Rola. Ms. Rola, can you tell us a little bit about your position at Standard Chartered, a little bit about your experience before you got into this position, and what really do you feel is your success and attributed to your success in this position today?
Thank you, thank you, Surya, and thank you for inviting me today for this panel. Well, my name is Rola Abu Mane, and I'm the country CEO for Standard Chartered Bank. I have joined the bank over 2 years ago, although I have over 26 years of experience in banking. Previously to Standard Chartered, I used to be in First Abu Dhabi Bank. And this is where actually I started my banking career, way out from university. I graduated from UK. I did a degree in operational research. So I did not do banking. But when I finished university, I think I always knew that I wanted to come back and do something in the field of finance, given what I had studied. And banking was a natural. I went in as an undergrad trainee and worked my way through all the way from branch banking to international banking. And then my last few years was in the corporate and investment banking space. And then after that, I joined Standard Chartered as my only and first international appointment. What I have learned throughout was that hard work, continuously learning is something that even now I keep on doing. Even as a CEO, it is very important that I learn something new every day. And this is what I tell my team. It's very important that you come to work passionately about what you're doing, as well as learn. Because unless you are learning on the job and expanding your horizon, you will never find a job challenging. So for me, I have to be challenged on the job, learn, and I'm a people's person. So it was important that my interaction is always with the people with me.
But Rola, the finance industry can be categorized as a very male-dominated industry. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, and sorry, go on. And can you tell us a little bit about the obstacles that you've perhaps faced in such a male-dominated industry?
So it is true, to answer your question, it is a male-dominated industry, but that never stopped me from pursuing my dream. And I was one of the very few senior women throughout my career in FAB. And in Standard Chartered, it's different because now banking has moved on. There is much more females. What we need is more females in the C-suite. This is what we all work towards. But I would say I was really lucky enough to have great leaders throughout my career, and work with truly inspiring leaders. So, and I now aim to pay it forward by mentoring, supporting, and creating opportunities for aspiring young leaders for them to make the change they want. You have to show that you want leadership because you require leadership skills as you move up the ladder. And for me, it started when I was in school. I used to be the captain of certain games, so it was naturally it came to me leadership, and it does require a lot of hard work, and you need to always keep reinventing yourself, staying relevant, and be confident. And this is what we require more women to be in the field of banking. And I think slowly, we're getting there. We're seeing more and more women enter banking. In Standard Chartered, we already we signed a charter, we have a commitment, the top senior female, we should be 30% by this year, and then by 35% by next year. So from that angle, we focus a lot on female in senior positions and how to holistically expand their career.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So what I might do is take the conversation over to Claudia, because Claudia, you're the CEO of Simmons. So by contrast, you're more focused, in the technology sector as opposed to finance. So can you tell us a little bit about your position at Simmons, what you do, and then your experience so far to date as a female a business leader and entrepreneur too. I understand that in your past you've been a co-founder of technology companies. So tell us a little bit about your background and then set the scene for us in your respective organization.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Soraya, for inviting me today to this great panel, and hello to everyone watching us. So my career, basically talking about male-dominated environments, I think I have ever since I joined college back in Brazil for an aerospace engineering degree that was already a male-dominated environment. I had to go through military training my first year of college with the Air Force, but that is another male-dominated environment setting. And ever since, growing up in this area, I think for me it just became kind of like a normal thing to deal with. And my interest for technology comes exactly because I studied engineering, and I did that because I simply liked a lot math and physics. And going forward, I decided to start my career actually in a strategy consulting, because I had a dream of building an international career, and doing that with the business is a little bit faster, or you can change countries in a faster pace than you can do with any academic or engineering related role. Nevertheless, after a few years in consulting, I decided to go and get a business education and pursue my MBA in the US. And after that, I wanted to combine both sides, combine the side of knowing what science and engineering is about with the business aspect that I had just studied. And I actually interviewed for a few roles within engineering companies, and I ended up getting a job with Siemens. However, in the middle of my MBA, I co-founded an education technology software as a service company in Brazil. And before joining Siemens, then I actually went back to my home country and set up the business. And once the business was up and running, I left it running by my co-founder, and I went to Germany to join Siemens at that point. And I had a number of roles with Siemens in spanning a few countries. So worked in Germany, Denmark, Portugal, China, and now I'm currently in Oman for the past 3 years. And basically there, Like there are a number of aspects that I could compare from the tech corporate world with the startup tech world that bring like a lot of different flavors to both fields that are helping to advance society.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that, though? Because often we find that women are either in the corporate space or they're in the startup space, whether it's tech or other industries. But you've had the benefit now of both those experiences. So can you tell us what the challenges have been in both of those, and whether there are any disadvantages or advantages to women being in either of those sectors, whether that be a tech startup or corporate space?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that it is gender related. There are definitely different challenges. So to name a few, like if you're in a startup space, for sure you have a lot of the perks of getting normally a team that is very motivated, because most likely everyone who joined the company, especially if it is a company in the first 3 to 5 years, everyone has this dream of building a unicorn, or of maybe going for an IPO, or building something that is going to grow and conquer more markets and so on. So there's definitely a very big motivation. You can easily get all of the employees as shareholders, because many times people who join startups, they don't get big salaries, so they get equity as part of their compensation. And therefore they really feel like if I put more effort, it's for my own benefit. So you can easily get a culture that is built by every single person. So every single person you hire really impacts the culture of the company. So every single hiring choice has to be really well made, because otherwise you can just take the whole strategy or the whole culture somewhere else, right? So these are like some of the let's say intricacies of being in a startup, along of course with some more challenging parts, which is like the risk that you take. I mean, in our case, we were bootstrapping, and I was financing the whole operation for the first couple of years, and therefore, I mean, you have no you're not sure that if you're ever going to get a return on that, and maybe you're just investing your time and money, and everything goes away. And that is actually most of the cases with startups. Most startups actually fail. So this is definitely something. And also when it comes to risks, many times as a first-time entrepreneur, you may not even know what you're getting involved in. And that is actually where I want to build on what Rola mentioned about hard work, because sometimes you get into situations, let's say if you're bootstrapping, you have to convince investors, you have to convince employees, you're not even aware if you're going to be able to pay those employees 1 year down the road, but you have to sell a story that everything will be all right, at least to get them on board. And then once you get them on board, then you don't want to necessarily them to be going on a much riskier environment than they are willing to. So you really have to work hard to get you out of that. And the same thing goes when, for example, you start building some technology and maybe you're infringing a patent of someone else. So you get yourself into lots of interesting situations, and you have to work hard to get out of them successfully. On a corporate setting, it's, I mean, for sure you have the certainty of what's going to happen in the future, and most likely the company won't go bankrupt. You have a financial stability. Many cases, at least in engineering companies, normally you have a very good buffer, financial buffer for investing in R&D, which is something that as a startup would always have. And very importantly as well, you have that stability of a brand. So being able to go around and say I'm the CEO of Siemens is very different from the times when I was at a company called Q Magical and I had to say, well, I'm the COO, CFO of Q Magical, and then you had to explain what Q Magical was. But then at the same time, on a corporate world, you don't have the freedom to do things or as fast as you'd like to do, or just testing things right and left. And you cannot have this experimenting environment as well as you can have in a startup, in which you can just like change things overnight and create maybe a new service or a new product.
But Claudia, can I ask you, because the challenges, I guess, that you're speaking of exist, as you say, and they're not gender specific, so they apply both to women and men equally. But is there any specific challenge that you find applies more to women than men in the technology startup space or even in the corporate world?
I would say, well, I think like in the corporate world, there is a whole discrimination sometimes in terms of age, in terms of like climbing the corporate ladder. I think this is like more country specific. So in some countries, especially in those where maternity leave policies are very generous, I would say that there is a little bit of a stigma in the workplace that most likely if you end up deciding to marry and having kids, then you may just like leave the workforce for like, I don't know, up to 10 years if you're thinking about a country like Germany where a woman can take up to 3 years of maternity leave and maybe they have 3 children and then they're gone for 10 years overall. So there is definitely a stigma that prevents sometimes people from trusting women in early age, let's say in their 30s or so, with higher responsibility because they may be afraid. If she decides to have kids and leave, then they have to like hold a position for her for the time whenever she decides to come back. And many times this is a little bit trickier if you give them a little bit more responsibility. So I would say this is definitely one big roadblock that exists. In terms of startup, I think funding for sure is, if you look at the numbers, there is like way less female founders or co-founders who get funding for their ventures. And I think depends again on the country, but some statistics shows that like less than 5% of VC money goes to female-only companies. Then, of course, when you get a founding team consisting of both male and female, that evens a little bit up. But still, there is way more money going to male-only founding teams. But that's also maybe a little bit of a consequence of having a lot more men dedicated to founding companies. But nevertheless, that explains part of the gap. That doesn't explain the whole gap.
Sure. So you think part of the reason why VCs don't invest in all women startups is because of the responsibilities and the obligations that they have, and it's just, is it that they're less vested? Is it they let work? What do you think is
not necessarily. So the way the whole fundraising process goes, it's a lot of relationship based. And I think at the end, you have like, especially if you think of Silicon Valley, for instance, it is a very big men's club sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you just like happen to, as a man, you happen to maybe get easier access to like the decision makers than you would necessarily have as a woman. Like maybe as a woman, you would have to start like getting the relationships one by one. And there is definitely a little bit of bias in both corporate and startup worlds of the mini-me. So people who try to find others who resemble them a lot. And then in this bias, it goes definitely that men end up funding a lot more companies founded by men, other than just looking for like a company founded by women. And that's also why I believe in any setting, I'm a big believer in quotas, because I believe when you put a quota in place, you actually force people to go beyond. I don't think you then necessarily benefit people who are not competent. I think you just force them to go look beyond the first natural choice that maybe would be a mini-me type of option.
Fair enough. Really good points there. Thanks so much for that, Claudia. What I might do now is bring Ms. Anwar into the conversation, because Ms. Anwar, you're in technology also, but you're in a little bit of a different setting to, say, Claudia, which is the corporate and startup space. So what I'd like to hear from you is tell us a little bit about Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, your role there, and then some of the challenges that you've faced or you believe women face in the technology field.
Thank you, Soraya. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, Land Transport Director, the team leader of Artificial Intelligence, and the team leader of the Scientific Research Committee. We in the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure focus on developing the infrastructure and energy for through the federal government in coordination and collaboration with the local governments as well in the United Arab Emirates. My experience have reached 20 years in multidisciplinary fields: urban planning, engineering, project management, AI, and innovation. I also got 2 degrees of basically master in urban planning and transportation planning, as well as the certificate, diploma certificate from Oxford on executive leadership and another one from Cambridge on innovation. When we talk about innovation in the government sector, it's important always to define the spectrum of innovation and what we are talking about. Is it an improvement level? Then it's an improvement. For me, if it exceeds 10 to 20%, then it's an innovation. It's not always related to something new or something physical. It can be change in, even in the customer journey map, that we can consider it an innovation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anwar, for that introduction. So can you tell us a little bit more now, maybe specifically about what challenges you feel like women face in the technology field, and whether you've specifically faced any of these, whether that be in this role or any of the other roles, such as being on board members, or, any role that you've held in the past years?
First of all, I'd like to highlight the government role in supporting women in C positions as well. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid stated clearly that every board must have at least one member, a female member on the board of federal entities. It's also important to highlight the role of women once it's getting more difficult when it comes to taking care of a family, as well as taking the ladder of success in her career. I could say that personally, I lost an opportunity of promotion every time I had a child. Unfortunately, this happened to me personally, but it didn't take me back to consider this was a challenge personally for me, but it makes me work harder to make sure that I deserve what I have reached. And when we talk about challenges, and women can take care of multi things on the same time. So this is an opportunity that we can grasp, and we can focus on. So it's always related to what do you want to focus. For example, considering multidisciplinary career, focusing on different things that will give you the bigger picture, holistic view. This is also supporting your career in general. When it comes to technology, my background is not IT, but I'm part of STEM, field. So STEM is really crucial when it's related to women because of many aspects. Some of them has been mentioned by Claudia, some I have mentioned earlier. So when we speak about engineering or technology, it's always about understanding what do you want, what field do you want to focus on, what are the requirements that the entity or the project require, and also where are we going. As a government, we are focusing on the coming 50 years plan. So we have already stated where do we want to reach, what to focus on. Very important to highlight that these challenges is not only related to a person and personal level. It's also related to the building the right momentum, having the right team, having the right curriculum, or the aspect that require you to reach what you want for the coming years, basically.
Thank you, Ms. Anwar. So what I'd really like to hear is more about how to actually do that. So building the right strategy, building the momentum, as you say, and developing the right team. But as a woman who's got, as you say, multiple tasks that you need to be focused on at the one time, competing priorities like your family, the workplace, your position, and trying to build your career, how do you do it? It's easy to say work hard, right? So most women are always giving that advice, work hard. But what does it take to work hard? Is it long hours? Is it sleepless nights? Is it deciding to have no more babies and just focus on career 12 hours a day? Is it, do you have to compromise one over the other? What does it actually mean? What are practical tips that you can give to the women who are going to listen in onto this conversation and who are aspiring to be in positions such as yourself?
Personally, I had a huge support family support is really important in this. Because if you don't have the support, you will always have this guilt of being not able to, build yourself and build your family. So a huge support from the family is crucial. The second thing is to plan. Always have a plan. So I always have a target of having an important, training or a course that I take every year. It can cost, three digits dollars. It can cost more, but for me, having this would definitely impact my career and develop basically my experience. Another thing is also to understand your career requirements and where do you want to reach. So if you have in your mind that you want to reach something in 5 years, you have to plan for it. So you have to draft the roadmap. You have to create a small, short-term plan, medium-term plan, and long-term plan. Sometimes you deviate from the plan. It's not easy to stick yourself to the plan, and many external issues or many external changes happen that will be big variables to your plan. But you try always to be agile and make sure that you incorporate these changes. It's not easy. It's easier saying than practicing it. But with time, your sharp skills will develop. You will be able to manage this change quicker and faster than what you expect. So, and that's what, to be frank, one of the things that I have went through is I have worked on the local government, private sector, and federal government. So getting this also understanding or where to bridge the gaps between these sectors, how to make sure that you understand what is hidden behind what you don't see, basically. You don't need to know everything, but you can see I could say the spectrums to understand where this would lead you to. It's also about what's in it for you. For me, I always believe on expanding knowledge. So innovation adds to the government as well as to my knowledge, as well as knowledge related to technology. So I'm not related to IT directly, but I have worked in digital transformation, robotic projects, project management, automation, and so on. So it's not easy to get all of this together unless you have the will and you are eager to learn more and more.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we really hit some good points there, because I'm sure the women that are going to be listening to this are going to have those questions. And I'm sure they've heard many panels before where it's women speaking about their experiences. And, we say things like, hard work will get you there, or focus on the task, or, plan. But I guess you gave us some really good insight into that. So what I want to do is go over to Dr. Tarifa now, because Dr. Tarifa, of course, you're a doctor. So what that means is you had to spend a considerable time and dedicate yourself to your field. So what I want you to do is just give us an introduction about your field, what you do, and then how you've consistently tried to develop and empower, as I understand, youth in the roles or in higher education, and also talk to us about the area of agriculture, which is quite, I guess, a developing space at the moment. So I'd love to hear more about that from you.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's quite inspiring listening to all those women. I am inspired for sure, and I hope that our listeners today will also be inspired with this wonderful talk. My journey started in higher education. So I studied business, and I've had my MBA, and then I wanted to work in education because I always wanted to influence young souls. I had challenges choosing my career. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I wasted a 1 year trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And therefore, I said nothing better than learning from my own experiences to try to inspire and help others who are studying. So I joined the university and I spent 20 years working for higher education. And it was a blend of teaching and being a part of the classroom's development and being part of student affairs and student engagement. And then it was rewarded by being a president of one of the government institution here in the UAE, which was the same university I graduated from. So it was really more of a journey of a give back than just having a job or a career.
Great. Okay. Seems
I
like
guess
she's
she
done
heard
that.
you.
Yeah, excellent. No worries. So what I might do then is just give us some time to come back. But Roll, I might go back to yourself. And can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, we heard Miss Anwar and Claudia and talk about what efforts they really had to put in to manage all of the competing demands that they have and to get to where they are today. And no doubt to become the CEO of Standard Chartered, you've done the same. Can you give us some very specific examples, even how you might handle a day in the life of being the busy CEO of Standard Chartered?
Thank you. So I've been over 2 years into the role. Now, obviously, as a CEO, your day spans from different things. You'll have different problems landing at your desk. But if I want to sum it up, what are the qualities of a CEO? It's you need to be very visible and you need to be calm because you can't jump and panic every time there is an issue. You need to listen. Listening is part of the strong leadership skills because you will have many people, they would want to be heard, and you may not agree with their views, but it is very important that you are there to listen to them. I'd also like to have an open door policy in the sense I like to be close to the team, at least to my top team. I am close to them. And it is very important to accept challenge because you may have some of your team members, they may want to put certain ideas which you may not agree with, but I always say constructive criticism is also important. There is nothing wrong with somebody saying, well, I don't agree with you. Even this person is not maybe a CEO, but part of the team or within an organization. Because one thing that's important in our field, especially in banking, it's innovation. And unless you have a team that has the freedom to come and speak openly about how to improve things, and that's how you will allow innovation. And this is where we see the gender equality and female empowerment, because when you have a team of gender mix, that's where you come up with, you have more ideas. So in the bank, we talk more about inclusion. We like to include people, different calibers, different levels, different nationalities, male, female, because that is what brings innovation and brings new ideas. At the end of the day, in banking, it's very important that you're there for your customers and you need to be seen more creative given the era of digitization that we are in now. So my day starts early and it's...
What time does it start? Is it 5 o'clock? When you're on the treadmill?
At 5 a.m. I do my trip at 6. And that's important because that's where, you start your day fresh. And then I would start office at 9. It goes on. Now with working virtually, you have much longer hours, but it's between, our internal governance meetings, certain client meetings, because it's very important that you're there for your clients, meeting one-to-one with certain people within the team. We have a lot of town halls. We have certain roundtables that I do with either the top talent or female leadership or the youth, the millennials. I mean, I love to work on, focus as well on the future, and that's part of the role of a CEO. It's not immediate just now. You have to really think of what we will be as a bank in 5 years' time, and because you have to start from now. So it's and this is what I said. It's good to be in a challenging job because you get different aspects when you're meeting with different people and even different types of clients. You need to be able to switch, and with that person talk about his domain or her domain and then move to something else. And it's very similar, Surya, to a woman, because if we look at women and just as Anwar said, we are mothers, we're sisters, wife, and then we also have, our work. So your personality changes and priorities as you move from your home to work and back again. And this is where, with women, I would say we're very good in multitasking. And if you multitask properly, you're organized and you're calm. And obviously you have the support of the family. That's how you succeed. It is a lot of hard work, but and it's measurable because it's very important that you measure every step that you take. So I think Dr. Tarifa's back on.
Oh, Dr. Tarifa, you are. Okay, no worries. I'll come back to you in just a moment. Roel, I wanted to ask you one last question before I go back to Dr. Tarifa. So you were selected as Middle East Power Businesswoman by Forbes Middle East for 2 years in a row. So if you had to sum it up and tell us a single word or a tip, what would be the reason for you being selected as that for 2 consecutive years? What do you think it is? Is it the remaining calm in the face of chaos, or is it something else that you would attribute to it?
I would say it's making an impact. It's very important that whatever you do, you have an impact on the organization or the people. And that comes with being visible.
All right, then Claudia, I might ask you just a few questions, if you don't mind, while Dr. Tarifa tries to come back on to the conversation. So what I think let's explore a little bit further the transition between going from the startup into Siemens. So wearing the hat of, as CEO of Siemens, as you said, is so different from, the pitching and perhaps the conversations you had as a startup. So how did you even convince Siemens to give you the title of CEO and to really demonstrate to them, well, I may have taken a break, I may be as a startup, but now I'm fit and able to take on the challenge of being CEO at Siemens. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition, the challenges, and how you handled it?
So basically, like from the startup until I got here, I also spent 5 years with Siemens in other roles. So basically, when I joined Siemens, I was joining in a program called the CEO program, and I was the Chief Executive Opportunity. So which were 3 different rotations to work around the world, working in a project for a CEO. And that helps you give visibility. And that's exactly how I managed to get to know the CEO of the Middle East. It was in like some networking programs that we had as part of the CEO opportunity. And in one of these networking events, I managed to meet with the CEO of the Middle East, and I demonstrated to him how I was fascinated by the growth that the region has. And I think he just had the idea of maybe this could be a great potential candidate for the first female CEO for Siemens in the region, right? So after the CEO program, I had a sales job in Europe. And then after that, the position opened up here and I was brought in. And I think the challenges arriving here, it was mostly the different type of market. So it's not a software business anymore. It is a hardware business. The region itself is very relationship driven. So it's adapting to the culture. And of course, the speed in Oman is a very slow paced country. So it's also like learning how to deal with people, building relationships over the long term. And as Rola mentioned as well, like being visible. And sometimes it means like being in many social events, especially here in the region.
I was going to say, thank you so much for picking up on that point. So it seems like there's a common sentiment that really, or an opinion that really stands out from Claudia and Rola's conversation. It's about visibility. So really, I think putting your best self forward at every opportunity, as you said, Claudia, perhaps networking at times, Rola in the CEO position, just being there to, be ahead of everybody, listen to their concerns, address what they are, bring people into the conversation. So that's some key points there. Thank you so much for that, Claudia. Dr. Tarifa, glad to have you back again. I hope that it's going to be a smoother conversation for you now. Let's try to take it forward one more time, and I hope, touch wood, that we don't fall off the grid again. So can we go back to where we left off with your conversation? And that was being at the university where you had started your, studies, and then really making an impact in that role. And then tell us how you moved to then the International Center for Agriculture, Bio-Saline Agriculture. And tell us a little bit about the challenges, the opportunities, and in that role.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to be back. And after I finished my experience with the university, I joined the International Center for Bio-Saline Agriculture now for almost a year and a few months. And the center, it really aims to find innovative solution for agriculture in marginal environments. So we really work in 35 different countries, and we try to empower science on how can we really ensure that there is a sustainability when it comes to food security. And the amazing part of it is, again, I'm back to the fact of the youth empowerment and ensuring that women are being represented in the field of science as a scientist in this center, and also working with women farmers who are not necessarily at the C-suite position, yet they are a very vulnerable group of women where it is our responsibility as women in leadership to empower other women who are not in leadership, or try to position them in a way where it really contributes better to their future, to their life, and to their well-being as a whole. So we consider working with sustainable development goals. Gender equality is part of it, and it's really very important that we focus on that. And again, whether using technology when it comes to agriculture, through capacity development, through education, and through really having experiments that will be adding value to the, I would say, the humanity in terms of food security globally. That's exactly where I get my adrenaline, and that's what it keeps me really awake at night, trying to think with my wonderful team, trying to find solutions where we can have Earth as a better place.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Tarifa. It sounds really exciting because food security is definitely becoming such a high priority, not just in the UAE, but globally, particularly with, COVID and that's hit as a pandemic, but also going into the future, knowing that there's going to be less resources in the world. So can you tell us a little bit more about the food security space and how do you continue to innovate? How do you, come up with these great ideas and continue to build momentum in that space, particularly as a woman? And I'm sure you've got other challenges and priorities, competing priorities as all the women on this call. So how do you do it?
Well, one of the main challenges I can speak about at the beginning is traveling. Working globally for women, and especially women with families, is really quite challenging, because that's where you really need to ensure your availability and commitment to international projects that impact the life of others. So this is really on the personal level. And this is, again, as Anwar mentioned earlier, with this family support, sometimes it is impossible to achieve those goals without having somebody beside you trying to ensure that you are being taken care of as a priority. Another thing is working with women in the rural area, which are very much of a priority for us. Again, we continue to innovate, trying to find and ensure that the knowledge transfer happen to women in rural area. Agriculture, like 40% of the agriculture being contributed by women. And it's very important that women in rural area are not being deprived from the technological revolution that's taken place in the urban cities. And that's why it's very important that we ensure the knowledge is being simplified, the knowledge is being transferred, and the capacity development is being done. A very successful example I can share with you, and it's really, I've heard it from my scientist colleagues, is we worked with a group of women in Morocco, and that is through planting or focusing on growing quinoa as a super crop for them because it's very healthy and very nutritious. And the idea is not only to educate women about this crop, but also to ensure that we have a full value chain, a supply chain that support them from the farm to fork. And therefore, we worked with the women on how they can really cook quinoa and incorporate it in their local dishes. So we hired a chef who worked with us to ensure that we provide couscous made out of quinoa, which is super nutritious, and it's a new dish improved. And not only that, it's also contribute to the income of those families. So being there and seeing how excited are these women and how can we really contribute to the sustainability of their living and how can we really improve their also health and being, something really very important, something we're very proud of.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Tarifa. And I guess you really echoed the point that Rola made about making an impact. And so that seems to be a very key issue and a key point in some of your success stories, whether it's Rola, Dr. Tarifa, Ms. Anwar, or even Claudia. It's how do you make an impact in the organization that you're in, and how that impact, I guess, helps you to keep on going, to keep inspired in your own organizations personally, and then to help those around you. So thank you for that point. I think that was an interesting point, and I guess one that is women should really be mindful of, regardless of what industries they're in. What I'll do is take the conversation back to Ms. Rola, and then we'll hear from Ms. Anwar again. And then I believe we have to wrap it up because I can see that time is almost up. But before we go, Rola, you talked about, maybe we can pick up on the point of impact again. And can you just tell us a little bit about the impact that you feel that you've made within Standard Charter, just to inspire some of the women that will be listening in on this call? How do you make it your ambition or your goal to continue to make an impact in the organization that you're with, knowing as well that there are always these competing deadlines or competing priorities that you have in your role as the CEO?
Thank you, Surya. Well, first of all, as a CEO, you need to have strong leadership skills. You need to be visible, and you need to set the strategy and have a vision. So any CEO that does not have a vision or there is no clear strategy will not have his or her people really rallying with one motive. Where are we going to take this institution? So it was very important that everybody aligns on what we want to do or be as a Standard Chartered. Now, the bank has been here for 60 years. It is the UAE is not new for Standard Chartered. It has deep roots in the Middle East, within the region, and overall it is a global bank. But yet, it's as somebody that comes in, it's very clear that you communicate your strategy, and your people need to align with you, and this is the first thing you would do. So communication is key. On the business side, and then you will need to communicate about, in general, about the people strategy as well. As a bank, we do a lot for our people when it comes to gender diversity. While we support Women's International Day, it's a very big thing for the bank, but we also at the same time support the men in the bank. So we celebrate Men's International Day on 19th of November. So it's very important to be inclusive. And that's how you bring everybody along with you in terms of what is the vision to be delivered for the bank. And it's not a short-term one, it would be something minimum 5 years. So from that angle, you need to define this. At the same time, when it comes to the internal policies and procedures of the bank, it needs to be holistic and aligned as much as possible for the people. You want this place to be an employer of choice. So when it comes to what we do for the women, how we drive, the women agenda in terms of, having more women in senior roles. Similarly, we take care of our talent as a bank, whether male or female. So we need to do a lot of work about that. And as a CEO, you need to be seen supporting really everybody that does a good job, being with people when they're in need. I mean, to give you an example, during COVID, I had to do a lot of communication, do a lot of big calls to speak to the people, advise them what we're doing, moving people back, the staff to work from home, and making sure that the ones that are in office, especially during March and April, that you have the full hygiene, safety in a workplace in a time like COVID. That was not easy. So it is not just, yes, we have this much working in office, that's it. But these are our heroes, those that went in April and March, while some of us were working from home. So we had to also take care of them. So it's all these small things that would touch everybody, but to make sure that you're for everybody, not only for women, but for everybody in the bank. So from that angle, you need to, I would sum it up, it's very much to communicate clearly with all your people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Rola. And I 100% agree with you. Well, the forum is Women in Tech, but really what stands out from what you're saying is it needs to be inclusivity. It needs to be everybody and how everybody feels like they're on board, because it's only when you have that collective spirit of every individual in the team member that you can actually achieve the goals that you set out to achieve in your organization. So thank you so much for that. Ms. Anwar, I might come back to you and then hear the last words from Dr. Tarifa before we close. But again, you lead teams, you lead the AI department, as I understand it, within the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. And so what are your last words to women who are in business, women who are in technology, and women who are trying to make an impact? What would your last words be to them?
I would definitely encourage them to learn more, to create their group of trust as well. It's important to understand how far they can go. They cannot go as I think there is an echo. Sorry, if you can make it silent from your side.
Okay, sorry, apologies.
So basically, it's how can they build the trust within their team? How can they achieve more with smarter, not harder? How can they achieve more? And most important, to highlight, to focus on changing the mindset, creating better understanding of what kind of data they need to create, because I believe that data is really crucial in the age of technology. So what kind of data strategy they need to create, and above all, read more and focus more on contracts, because contractual issues always raise because of not reading the things behind it. So focusing on technology means technology is rapidly changing, and so the contracts should be. So it's important to focus on shifting mindsets, creating data strategy, and definitely focusing on reading more and changing contracts as much as possible.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Anwar. Dr. Tarifa, last comments from you about women in their respective organizations, how to lead the way, take charge. What are your last words and inspiring words for them?
I would certainly agree with Anwar. Lifelong learning is very important to continue learning and continue not only learning from books and institute, but also learning from role models, surrounding yourself with the great mentors and observe what other people are doing. I think it's very, very much important where we can really learn on daily basis. Besides that, the key two skills that never underestimate the soft skills and the power of emotional intelligence, the power of resilience and agility. Again, COVID proved to the world how important is resilience and agility. So is for a human being. I think we need it at most, especially for our well-being and emotional being at the same time.
Excellent. Thank you so much for those lasting comments. And you're 100% right. Really, it is about long life learning, because that's, I think, the purpose of life. It's to grow, isn't it? It's to constantly change, adapt, be agile, innovate, and adapt to the new challenges. And certainly we faced a lot of those in 2020. We don't know what's in store for us in 2021, but so far what we can see is the ladies that we have on the panel today that have joined us have done an absolutely amazing job, and may they continue. So God give you the strength to really weather those challenges in 2021 and continue to be an inspiration for all women from around the globe, not just the UAE. So thank you for attending this session, for being patient with us while we have had some technical issues. But hopefully that doesn't take away from any of the really inspirational messages you've passed today to the audience. So thank you once again. We've now reached a close, and unless anybody has anything further to say, this concludes our session.